All right, this is class number 2, Pastoral Care. We're going to pick back up with caring for the hurting. So I was sharing some statistics with dads, and I said even if a dad is present, 25% of the children spend less than an hour a day with their dad, and it's the next level of that. So, half of the kids haven't seen their dad in the last year, and then if dad is present, only 1 in 4 dads actually get to spend an hour a day with their kids. That speaks to a lot of other issues in our community where we got, we're running hard at our careers, at going to the gym, going to hang out with our friends, going doing our hobbies, going doing all the things, and left at the bottom of that barrel is the kids, right? And instead of going, I'm going to invest into my kids, I'm going to invest into, if we're going to make disciples, of anything, the best thing that we can make disciples of should be people in our own home, right? Like, I should be able to invest my life better into my kids and into my wife, similar to them into me, because we should actually walk through some stuff together, right? And not just end up, we're going all our different ways and just kind of crash under the same roof, right? And then go back out there and crash on the same roof. We should spend more time together making disciples of those in our own home. Another hurting thing is we need to call dads to become involved in the lives of their children. I feel passionate about this. This is one of those things that really I do care about, and I've cared about for a long time, is fathers being fathers. Like, I don't know why I felt so strongly. My dad was a good dad. Like, beyond the alcohol issue, my dad was at all my games. He was at home every night. Like, he was around. He was not disconnected and out there. He was like there and present. And all through my high school years and college years, like, they traveled. My parents have traveled and seen and been close, and they're great grandparents even right now. They're incredible people, right? So I don't think that the reason I'm so passionate about dad things is because I had dad in my life. I think I actually have maybe something gifted in me that God has implanted in me to be a father, like, not just for my own children, but to help other fathers be better fathers. And so I'm passionate about that, and I've tried to feed that passion to help other people. Sexual abuse is another issue that people are hurting. As many as 1 out of 4 children will be sexually abused before they're 18 by someone that they should have been loved by or trusted. Like, many abuse issues happen with people close, and it's not just this random somebody who does this just heinous act of some sort. It's actually somebody close that should be trusted. And 1 in 4 children, that's a terrible percentage. Like, it's a horrible situation. I don't think, like, if I could be honest, I don't know what the church in general is doing about this issue. I don't mean East Coast. I mean the global church. What is the global church doing about sexual abuse in kids? Like, what are we doing to prevent that? Like, I understand, like we background check people who serve in children's ministry, right? That's something we're doing to protect kids when they're on our property. But what are we doing to teach safety for kids on one side, but on the other side, like, responsible sexual behavior to people? Like it comes down to, we have to actually teach a good outlet for sexual behavior instead of this demented, destructive, foul that the world has portrayed as normal. And I don't mean normal like it's accepted, sexual abuse is accepted, but like, weird sexual behavior has become such a norm that people are willing to take more risk sexually than they should biblically, if that makes sense, right? Like, so I don't know the answer to this, but I hope people are passionate about ending sexual abuse in children. Like, it's one thing to protect and a background check and put safe people in trusted spaces. I think that is super helpful. But outside of institutional safety, like teachers and, pastors and leaders and things like this, what are we doing to teach good sexual behavior to people? Like, I don't know the answer to that, and I maybe don't care enough about it. I want to care more about it. Like, when I actually ask myself these questions, I'm like, man, maybe I should care. Maybe I should make a difference in it, right? Sexual addiction. Statistically, in a congregation of 500, you may have 50 sexual addicts, which is 1 in 10. I think that statistic is probably low. I think it's probably higher. If there were 500 people and only 50, I'm saying only 50 because I tend to believe that there's probably a higher percentage that is underreported of sexual addiction. Not very few would be like, oh, I'm a sex addict, right? Or, hey, I look at pornography all the time. Like, in certain denominational settings, for sure that's going to be underreported. In other non-denominational or denominational settings where there is actual ability to be transparent and to be real and to be vulnerable and get help for your issues, it might be close to this number, but man, I think it's underreported. Depression says 20% of Americans in the course of their lifetime will be clinically depressed. That number has certainly gone up and has increased over the last couple of years, just with all the COVID thing. Like depression is, and I don't want to be insensitive to the thought of depression by any means, but I think that there's a bit of a factor in the accepting depression, like just going, hey, and normalizing that more people are depressed and depression is okay, versus clinical depression. I think clinical depression is another level than someone going, man, I'm really depressed today. Like, really depressed today, not clinical depression, right? Like, there's a difference there. And so as we normalize some behavior, and I'm saying normalize like we just speak commonly of these kinds of things, what can happen is that it becomes so normalized that when it really is a problem, we don't recognize it as such a big problem, right? Where if you were to turn back the clock 50 years ago and somebody said, man, I'm really depressed today, people would be like, what? Like, what is that? Like, because people wouldn't even normalize that term to the extent that we've normalized it now, right? It used to be, like maybe 15 years ago, that like what they would call self-injurious behavior, like cutting. There was a era of youth that was cutting was this cool thing, right? Which was leaving markings, and there's now a bunch of 30-year-olds that have these markings, that it was like this thing that they could express their pain through hurting themselves, right? And it became normalized that it was just normal, this is what people do, this is what teenagers do. And then what happened is there was some higher suicide rates because they would have accidental, like, go too far with them and that stuff. So I think we have to be careful as practitioners. I don't feel like I'm a practitioner, but a provider of care and a leader and somebody who is spiritually in tune to a climate in our community and around, which leaders in churches should be in tune with the spiritual climate. We should be careful not to normalize things that don't need deafening. If that makes sense. As something becomes normal, we just don't hear it. Like it's being said, but we don't notice it anymore as much, right? We just become tone deaf almost to it. Does that make sense? Is that clear?
And in a way, that's one thing, but then another thing is like it's way out there, and it's kind of like you deny it.
Oh yeah.
Because you don't understand it, or the fear factor, and it's like, oh, did I really hear what that was? And that's weird, and I don't want to get involved. So you step back and you go on the safe path, and you let them go over there. But yeah, it's like, where's this going? And
well, there are assessments. Yeah. Good news is that in our culture today, there are assessments for assessing clinical depression like never before. Like 20 years ago, we're not easily accessible. Now, there are assessments that can be done to assess clinical depression versus somebody having a bad day and calling it depressed, right? Like a bad day, yeah, you feel depressed, right? You can feel depressed, but being stuck and depressed and like clinically depressed, those are like, I didn't want to get out of bed today. Like, not like, hey, I felt like sleeping in. It's two different things, right? Like, I didn't get out of bed today, or I haven't gotten out of my house in 14 days or something. Like, I've just been, there's a difference there. And our job as providers of care is to listen and hear the difference between I feel depressed and I haven't left my house in 10 days. 10 days at home, I understand. If it's a COVID situation, you have to be at home for 7 to 10 days. Okay. But if not, there's not that many people that if we were to turn it back 18 months ago, they would say, I've been at home for 10 days straight and not left my house, that weren't probably clinically depressed, like, or clinically anxious or some other term that we would define, right? Like, so now we've normalized some things that become normal, but we have to listen better. And we're going to talk about this in our hours here together, is that we have to be incredible listeners. If we're going to care for people, we have to hear what they're really saying. Not what we're hearing only, but what are they saying? And we have to be able to ask questions that have grace in them and care in them and not just go after things. So let me give you a few more statistics. Anxiety says 1 out of 6 people experience some type of debilitating anxiety. Again, this isn't just, hey, I feel anxious today. This is like debilitating. Like, I don't drive my car. I'm not saying it's me, but somebody who doesn't drive, I was talking to somebody today who they're a young person, 16, 17-year-old kid, just won't go to Aldi's and get a gallon of milk because they're terrified to get out on the road on their car. Now, they've driven before, but they got into an accident, and now they're anxious when they get behind the wheel. Okay. That's debilitating on some level, right? Like, hey, I can't drive at night Not because my eyes aren't good, but because I'm anxious that I know someone's going to run out in front of me, right, or something, right? I'm not going to see them. There's this kind of this fear-based debilitating anxiety. This is 1 in 6 people. That's a lot of people. Like, I was saying this to my wife. This is off. This makes no sense to what we're talking about right this second. But I was saying this morning to my wife, because we've been dealing with some other circumstances in our lives of people with insecurities. And I said this to my wife this morning. I think it's true. Y'all can help me. I need help. Y'all ready for this? You're going to care for me now. I was saying this to my wife. I was saying, I think from God's perspective, when we look at insecurities, like, maybe y'all would be transparent with it. Is there anything y'all are insecure about that you would share? Like, give me an example.
Not being needed. Not
being needed. Okay. So, Fee could be insecure of maybe at some point somebody wouldn't need Fee, right? Like, so, based on that, Fee could react out of that insecurity and overly work to make people think that she's really needed, right? Like that, you could see how that could happen, right? Okay, so play that out. Fee works extra because she wants to feel needed or wants to be needed, right? Like, thanks for being transparent with that. I now go, wow, Fee's overworked. Like, she's working too hard. But it's out of this insecurity, right? And I feel a burden for her, not the insecurity, because I don't see the insecurity. All I see is she's working hard. I feel a burden for that, and I'm like, oh, I got to take something off of her plate. And so out of that, I'm like, boom, we're going to throw this on somebody else, right? And there's this chain reaction to one insecurity, right? That it's going to happen. It's going to chain reaction. In a relationship, I was saying, in the relationship I was talking about in a marriage setting, somebody doesn't bring up an issue because they're insecure of what their spouse might think of them and might react certainly. So they're insecure, so they react in fear and get bound. At the same time, the other spouse lashes out because they feel like that's the only way they're going to be heard because they're insecure of actually like calmly discussing something because they would feel broken or something, right? And there's this constant back and forth, insecurity. And what would it look like from God's perspective if we were just free? Like, Fee wouldn't have to overwork because she wouldn't have to worry about, or I'm using it as an example, like I don't know that Fee overworks. She might. I don't know. I'm leaving that alone. But Fee feels insecure about something and there's a reaction and then there's another reaction, and before we know it, we have this culture that's all based off of everyone's insecurities instead of their freedom. What would real freedom look like if a group and bunch of people actually lived free? Probably look like heaven. Like, this is a discussion I was having this morning. I was like, what if we could just be free? Like, my wife was sharing an insecurity with some friends recently. And she would testify to this now, and it's not exposing her. She would openly testify to this. So hang in there with me because y'all might talk to my wife about it at some point. But my wife had felt for a lot of years, insecure about not finishing college. Like, she went to college. She was like a nursing major. We got married, and she was a CNA. She worked in the nursing arena, had passion for nursing. But in the back of her head, she was always only doing nursing in case she didn't get married right away, right, and have kids and like be mom. Her greatest call, she always grew up thinking was, I'm going to be mom, I'm going to be wife. Perfectly content with that. That's what her dream job was, to be mom and wife, right? But in the back of her head, she was always feeling insecure and less than because she didn't have a college degree, didn't have a piece of paper, because successful people have pieces of paper. Felt insecure, unsuccessful, right? And in conversation, she would always have to feel like she'd have to like kind of figure out a way to kind of measure up to something. Oh, but I have 4 kids and I care for this and I drive all over and I do all the things because I don't have a degree and I'm not successful. This is going to have to make me successful. She was sharing it with some friends recently, and the friends were like, that's ridiculous. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, you're one of the most like, and they went on all these incredible compliments about my wife and how she's all these great things, you know, and that they would want. And these are successful people with degrees and all the education you'd ever want who don't have all the things, right? Quote unquote, right? And I'm like, honey, do you hear that? Because I've had this conversation 20 times with her. Like, in 19 years, we've had it at least once a year. I'm like, honey, listen. And now she feels insecure because we're ganging up on her about her insecurity. Like, you know, like this whole dynamic. So what happens? She goes to sleep that night and literally wakes up at 3 o'clock in the morning. And God gave her a dream. And the dream that God showed her just some some silly behavior in the form of like petting some animal that normally you wouldn't pet, and that she would just keep kind of going back and like petting it, and you shouldn't be petting it. No one, everyone else was like terrified of it. She's over there just kind of petting this thing that was very, very dangerous. But she just kept going over to pet it, going over to pet it. And then it reared its like demonic head. Like it was like this demonic thing that she was petting and kept going back to. She woke up and she's like, God, what am I petting? What am I, like literally in 3 o'clock, I'm dead asleep. I didn't even know this was happening. But she woke up in the middle of the night to this dream. The guy was showing her that you've been petting this demonic thing and just going back to it all the time. And you need to not do that because it's going to bite your head off at some point. It's going to get you, And you're going to, And so she's literally at 3 a.m. praying, God, is there something? There's something. And it had been the night before we, called it a day. And so it had been this thing that had been, but God, no joke, freed her of that insecurity after 20 years or some number of years of carrying that thing, right? Well, what if we helped people get free like that? Like I share all of that to say, we get the honor of not having to hope somebody has a dream at 3 o'clock in the morning and wakes up to it. We can show someone the truth about their value. And though I tried to tell my wife for 19 years, like, no, look at all the great you're doing, and others had as well, they have to, at some point, get their own revelation from God, right? That is caring. Caring is going, I'm going to show them the truth. I'm going to point out a lie. I'm going to show them the truth. I'm going to love them. I'm going to give them grace. Hey, you know what? Like, I give my wife an incredible amount of grace about this lie that she's believing about her worth and value, right? But now to see her free and not have to carry that burden, I'm like, that's awesome. Like, we're never going to have to go there again. Like, this is incredible, right? And she doesn't have to worry about like, hey, I got to go get a college degree. Because literally until like 6 months ago, she's like, I'm going back to college at some point. I'm going to finish that thing. And I'm like, why? For what? I have pieces of paper on my floor right now that you're going to go on a wall at some point, but I don't even care about them. Like, it's a piece of paper, like, which most people who have that piece of paper are like, it's nonsense. But it hurts people. Like the craziest things people can be anxious or stressed or overwhelmed about, right? So, anyway, example. Stress. Another thing that's killing people. It's literally killing people right now, stress. And there's this idea of hurried stress. We're always in a hurry to go somewhere to do something that nobody really cares about, but we do.
And we booked ourselves.
And we think everyone else does, but they don't. And because they're hurrying too.
Yeah.
We feel alone. We feel isolated. Before you know it, you got some sleep issue because you can't go to sleep at night. You got adrenaline till the last second. Then you wake up at crazy times of the day and you're like, I got to do whatever. It's like, dude, take a deep breath and relax. Like, it's not healthy. It's not good. Heart disease, high blood pressure, all the craziness. We talked about marital conflicts, another thing that people are hurting with. Statistics say, and this has been long-standing, 50% of marriages will end in divorce. In the church, it might even be worse than that. I don't know. Like, depending on who you ask, and that's first marriages. Second marriages, that number goes higher. Third marriage, that number goes higher. Fourth marriage is even higher. Once you've gotten out of one, the second one's easier to get out of. Like, it's like the first time you try, you get drunk, it's easier to get drunk the second time, or the first time you try whatever. It's all that. Marital stuff, we get the honor of helping people navigate through marital conflict and help them just see there's a better way. And we get to care in the meantime. Childhood struggles, latchkey kids, there's a whole generation, like my generation. I was like the beginning, and latchkey kids were not even a thing until like my generation. Like moms and dads working really didn't need to happen or didn't start happening. I think somewhere in the 80s, like it was like this thing that became an issue. I could be wrong, but my understanding of this is like in the early 80s, somewhere in there was this whole like thing where there was an empowerment that, man, go make more money, go, and it started this chain reaction. Now, how many kids come home to an empty home? Like mom and dad both out working, like it's challenging. It can be really challenging. Some areas of the country, it's not that way in the United States, but in a lot of larger areas of our country, it's people both sides working hard and trying to provide. And we're going to see more of it as the cost of living goes up. I don't think it's going to change. Something supernatural is the only thing that can change that. It's called contentment. Like Paul said, and whether I base or I bound, I'm content. Like we have to get to a place where we're content, not based on how big our house is or how nice our car is or how nice our stuff is, and really get more content in other things. Bunch of kids need professional counseling today, more kids than ever. More kids have been diagnosed with ADHD, learning disabilities, conduct disorders, all these disorders. There's just a lot more of those things. I do think that most of that or a lot of that is tied to how parenting is today. Like nobody's teaching parenting. Like who, again, I'm passionate about this, but I'm like, man, when am I going to get to do that? But like, people need to teach parenting classes. Like, somebody need to teach a parent how to parent.
Exactly.
Nobody taught me how to parent. There's no instruction manual. The Bible's great, but there's very little in there about how to parent my kid. Like, to be honest, like, there's things about character and how to be kind and how to, and all that. But like, dude, there's not really that much about bedtime. Like, give me some, what am I supposed to do between 8 and 10 at night, like, to get my kid to actually go to bed, right? Or what am I supposed to do in the morning to get them out of bed? Like, they're teenagers now, you know, like, well, somebody needs to help, set some boundaries, like, teach us to do this stuff. Somebody, help us, Lord. And that's the value that's the value of the Big C Church. There are people. There are great books. James Dobson is, bringing up boys, and and I'm saying bringing up boys is just one example. There's great books in the Christian culture about how to raise kids, how to do that. But again, we got to point people towards this. That couple that I'm telling you about with 2 4-year-olds and a 5-year-old, they don't know what they're doing with their kids. That's just one more layer of stress, and it's only going to get worse from here. At 4 and 5, when you're just plugging them in to watch a movie or plug them onto an iPad or plug them in, there's more things to plug them into today than there used to be. It used to be like, go outside, kid, like come home for dinner or something, Now it's like, sit with your iPad, dinner will be ready in a minute, or sit with you this or that. We got to teach people. We got to help people.
And that comes around because when they're older, and then
Sure.
those children are going to have to take care of their aging parents.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to be just shoving their parents off into a corner.
Or even just not learning how to be productive adults.
Right, and communicating,
I said this weekend, I was reiterating what this conversation that, the message this past weekend was an interview. Pastor Matt was interviewing a professional counselor, pastor on a staff in Seacoast Church in Charleston. And he said, we don't know how to be bored. Our kids don't know how to be bored. Like, if I'm bored, I'm taking a nap. Like, there's only a couple options. If I'm bored, I'm going to sleep or I'm taking a nap. Like, because I'm only bored because I got nothing to do. And if I got nothing to do, I might as well sleep. That's what I think about it. Like,
just sitting around
doing nothing. Yeah.
They're out helping me with the dishes,
Yeah, I want my kids to be bored. I'm like, I got to find a way to make them be bored, because what happens though when they're bored is they just start bickering or fighting or doing something to stay busy, right? Like, because they've been trained that you have to. What are we doing today? Oh no, like, figure it out, bud. Like, there's more in that area right over there than I ever knew was possible. Yeah, hey, go wrestle or something. I don't know. There's a pool out there. Like, see that? Go swim. Like, before we ever had a pool at our house, it was like, oh, we want a pool, Dad. And I'm like, dude, you had a pool. You haven't swam in months right now. Like, and it's been summer. It's not like it's been cold or something. We have a heater, as a matter of fact. We can turn on the heater. Like, it's just amazing how normalized things that were just like heroic before are like just lame, like that was the coolest whatever, and it's just lame. It's because we've just raised the ante so high,
too, that's maybe attached to the inability to be content.
Yeah.
Right? Like, there's so much of, I don't know how to be bored because I need a fix. I need something.
Another
Instead of
thing.
being able to go, man, I don't have to do anything right now.
Yeah.
Great. Fantastic. I'm going to drink a cup of coffee and
just sit.
I don't know, I'm just going to sit.
Think about nothing. I said that this weekend. If I could just think about nothing, that would be so cool. like, and I do that. I could be guilty of doing that, thinking about nothing. Like, I'm okay with that. Like, I want to be more of that, thinking about nothing,
But can you do that in front of your wife and your family?
Sometimes.
No.
My husband never believes me. He'll be like, what are you thinking? I'm like, I'm not thinking about anything right now. He's like, you trying to be about something. Like,
that's what I said the exact same thing. I was like, you know what? If I say that, I don't know if I'm being trusted. That somebody thinks I'm lying right now. Like, I'm actually thinking about something I don't want to tell you or something. Like, no, I dead serious could just be thinking about nothing. Like, just, I didn't even know I was here for a second. Like, I'm just out there. Like, I'm not flying a rocket in space, nothing. I'm just like dead space here, right?
My brain is so busy that I actually turn on the television. They say when you're watching TV, it's almost close to sleeping.
Okay.
Because that's why I can't remember sometimes something that I've watched, years later.
Yeah.
But I have to get my mind off of the rumination or whatever, and if I can't sleep, I'll just go and watch TV and just until I can fall asleep, because I got to get it off what I'm trapped in, so.
The Bible will put you to sleep.
Yeah,
you could turn that Bible app on. Listen to that a little bit.
I said I've stayed up 3 hours watching stupid lame TV, and the Bible is right there in the guest bedroom, because I go in another bedroom, so I'm just with my husband. This is like, yeah, I need to, there's the word right there.
Sure.
And that's probably what I need, is that message to get me to fall asleep and just turn it over to God, you know? He's got it while I'm sleeping. I just have to let go.
I realized I should have been clicking through these. Sorry, I failed. There we go.
It'll be reflected in your...
You can follow. The next one is struggling adolescents. They're searching for identity and acceptance. Teen pregnancies. Oh my gosh. 1 million teenage girls per year get pregnant. That is a lot of young girls trying to make decisions that they should not have to be making at that age about, am I going to carry this baby to term? Am I going to adopt it out when I get there? Or am I going to abort? What am I going to do? And those are really tough conversations to be had. Like, you have to, I mean, you're not in a space as a young girl to have to make that determination, but you have to make those decisions. And we get to lead people into the right decisions in those arenas. And it is stinking hard. And what do you do when they don't make the right decision? What do you do when you counsel someone who does end up going and have an abortion? Like, actually, what, come on, you can do this. You get it all set up. You got the road, the path to get there. They're going down it, and then hard left turn abortion. And you're like, this is a story in our church years ago, so it's safe, I think, at this point. Years ago, I was supposed to be meeting a pastor to play golf in Daytona Beach on my day off. So it was like on a Friday, I was going to go meet this guy in Daytona to play golf. On the way there, I got this call. I think Ernestine called me and said, hey, I have a message from so-and-so. Could you give them a call? They got a crisis. And I was thinking, man, it's my day off. I don't want to call. I don't want nobody. Like, I just want to go play golf. Like, and I just go hit a golf ball, you know. And I called him because I was on the road. I was going to be in the car for a long time, for 45 minutes or whatever. And so I called and I was like, hey, what's up? I don't know these people. I was like, hey, how's it going? And it was a wife, like a lady, whose daughter was pregnant. The daughter had recently done some significant travel, like missions travel. And now she'd come home and it had been maybe 2 months, and she found herself pregnant, 8 weeks. And the wife, or this lady is calling me, it's her daughter, and this is a grown 30-year-old daughter, right? The woman calls me and she says, my 30-year-old daughter was dead, and tells me this story, and my husband is driving her to the abortion clinic today. I was like, oh, Jesus, help me. I'm like, okay, so there's a whole lot going on here. There's this whole abortion counseling side of things, and then there's this marriage issue where the wife is going, my husband, and the husband is saying, hey, I'm going to do this because I feel like I need to love my daughter. This is a decision my daughter's made. I need to show her love. Godly love in the midst of her circumstances. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh. On one level, I see it. I see grace. I see dude going, hey, I want to love my daughter, even in her brokenness. But she does know better. She is a believer. She's a follower of Christ. She's making a bad decision. Mom's going, I recognize my daughter's making a bad decision. Call my husband and tell him to not do it. And I'm like, well, I can't win. What am I going to do? I'm going to destroy a marriage on one level to save a child, right? Or I'm going to not destroy a marriage and not do that and give up a child. This is going to the abortion clinic. And I'm like, they were driving to Orlando, from Brevard to Orlando, where they could go and do this. I prayed some of the craziest prayers I've ever prayed in my life. Blow a tire on the way, Jesus. I'm thinking, find a way, Lord. Stop this thing. I don't know. I called the husband. He hadn't picked up the daughter yet. I was like, can you tell me what's up? Your wife had some concerns. She wanted me to call. I'm Brian, by the way. We've never met before. It's the principal got called on the kid, and the kid's feeling now exposed by the pastor calling, right? I'm like, hey man, I understand this is going on. I understand it's difficult. And I'm like, what do I say? Lord, help me. What do I say? And I'm just trying to hear his heart. And what are you trying to accomplish here? Do you recognize the bigness of what you're doing? Yes, it's her choice. Yes, it's her right. But your hands might be bloody in this mess. In the end, you're facilitating this. You got a part to play in this. Why are you choosing? Well, I don't want to lose my daughter over this. And I'm like, well, you're losing your grandchild over it. And I'm being as honest and just loving and caring as I can, but yet I'm trying to draw a hard line to go, please please save the child. Like, literally, I don't know anything else to say other than I'll raise the child. Like, let me be the guy. Like, and I've, by the grace of God, my wife and I have offered that to others along our journey, going, hey, I'll be dad. Like, if there's no dad in the picture, I'll be dad. Like, let my wife and I, like, tell her she's got another way. I'm literally crying, like, on the drive to go. I pull into the parking lot, I'm still not off the phone, and this other pastor's like, are you okay? And I'm like,
kind of know.
I'm like muting, I'm like, this is a mess, And in the end, it ended with me going, you know what, I want to pray for you because I care for your heart. And I care for the mother's heart in this situation, and I care for your marriage. And I recognize this is a mess, and this is hard, and I don't have all the answers, and I don't know what you're going to decide or what's going to happen, but I'm praying for a miracle, and I just want you to know I'm going to stand on the side of life and life abundant for that baby, and come what may, I just have to live there. That's where I'm going to live, and I'm going to choose to live there. No hard feelings towards you. Like, I understand you're making a hard decision, but I love you, and I'm going to be here on the other side of whatever decision you make. But man, I'd really love you to make a different one than this, Thanks. Appreciate the call. Have a great day. I just went, oh my gosh. So you're off the phone, and I was like, now I'm going to go play golf. Like, how do you just, like, check out of that and just go, I'm going to just go get golf balls, Like, I didn't know anything else to do other than I can't control it. I couldn't do anything more about it. I've done all I could do. I prayed. I trusted God. Found out later that the young girl had an abortion. I was like, I see this couple at our church all the time. All the time. I'm like, bro. Like, I'm thinking, bro. Like, it could have been different, Like, because I know, because I've sat with people who have walked the abortive process on the other side of that, and the burden that they've carried for years, and the condemnation, and how the enemy uses that against them, and all that. And I just know that maybe there's a better option, and I could have, but I did all I could do, and I just have to let go and go, okay, God, you got all this now, and I'm going to be here now, and I see this couple. I don't hate on them. Hey, man, what's up? Like, can I if I needed to minister to this dude in any other way, and I get to, because I get to be a part of the ministry team here, I'm in. Like, I'm going to love this dude. Man, it's hard. Like, it's hard to watch. It's hard to endure that. But what do we have to offer? The grace of God. Like, that's all we can do, right? And then you just go, man. And it's tough. And it's not easy. And you just go, come on. I'm going to go love the next one. And I'm going to go care. But as I've now described for 35 minutes or something, there's a lot of brokenness in our community. And we do have answers. And we do have a way to do it. It's going to be through the lens of grace, but we have to care about the most precious thing, which is people. And so if it is our greatest call, yeah.
I was going to say, before you go off that too, it would be nice to hear when they're talking about abortions and things like that, that, you said it's $1 million for the women.
Yeah.
But to remember the other side.
Oh, yeah, there's a man there too. Oh, yeah.
And they need to bring in, like, say, teaching, because it's $1 million of the boys' families that are affected as well.
Certainly.
And,
it's wise.
What's going on in the dynamics of the sexual, because they're feeling their love or their worth through that at that time, because that's what our society does with film and TV and everything. But, if you can pass that through your pastorship, because women in the audience feel all the burden on that.
Oh, yeah.
We don't hear the men having to take the responsibility or that they need to stand up.
Oh, yeah.
And,
it's good.
That.
Be dad, be father as well, right? I mean.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm super blessed.
Even beyond, before that, the preventive part of it.
Oh, yeah. Again, it's appropriate sexual behavior, right? Like, it's, again, training.
You're supposed to honor the girl. Yeah. And you're just taking them for a ride, because a lot of it, it's two to tango, but, I think at that point it's the testosterone, the boys are stronger in their sexual drive. But I don't want to get into all that physical stuff right now.
Yeah.
My main thing is just remember with your messaging, it's not just the women, the young girls or whatever, it's the men as well.
The Agape Pregnancy Center right here on Merritt Island, right here at First Baptist, just up the street from here, does a really good job of ministry to the guy and the girl. And if a young man were to come in and want to get some counsel, want to get some advice on anything related to, trauma pregnancy, we'd call it, or crisis pregnancy, they have the ability to get it just as much as the female there. The young couples coming in could get I mean, they have an incredible reward system. They have a process over there where if you come in and you want to get an ultrasound, for instance, they'll offer you a first ultrasound, which significantly reduces the rate of abortion by the grace of God. There's ministries that have the ability to get that first ultrasound so that you can see a heartbeat and you can see the things that will radically, reduce it. But then they'll also walk you through the process for adoptive situations. Hey, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do this myself. Okay, let's give you parent training. You come to class, you're going to earn tokens that you can redeem for diapers, for the future, strollers, car seats, all the things that you might need that would be overwhelming to a teenage or to a 35-year-old. These are not all just teenagers.
Oh, yeah.
These are, there's a lot of unwed situations or outside of wedlock or even
multiple children.
There's, crazy as it sounds, inside a wedlock, this is an issue as well. This is not only for the teenage or only for the, traumatized, victim of some rape or incest or something. There are a full gamut of this. But Agape Pregnancy Center is well trained in being able to walk any of those stories. And again, they're going to interview, they're going to listen to the story, and then they're going to assess what our best next step is. And that's what all of us that are going to provide care, that we're going to do anything well in ministries, we got to listen well. So many times there's a type A personality that's like, I got all the answers and I'm going to go and I'm going to teach you and I'm going to tell you, before you just stop and just listen. Just listen. You can actually be I love this verse, probably because I need it more. I need it a lot. But, it says, even the fool is counted wise when they remain silent. It's a legit proverb that I'll be more wise by just shutting up. Just stop and listen and let God actually download wisdom as you listen. Because I do believe that we could hear what we need to hear, even though it's not always being said directly, in a conversation, that would give us the ability to minister to somebody that something was never said, but we certainly heard it through the, communication by the grace of God, and then we go minister to that. And so anyway, they do a really good job of that over here at the Agape Pregnancy Center. We support it as a church on a monthly basis. People in our church give towards that as well, and they're doing great work. And even right now, they have a freedom group that's going on over there where we have a woman leading, actually two women leading a freedom group at the Agape Pregnancy Center, walking young girls there. Right now, it's a group of girls through the curriculum of understanding how much God really does love them, that shame doesn't have to be their portion, and that all the things that the freedom curriculum, which is really good at helping people get free and in that season of life. So, and they'll come to the Freedom Retreat. They'll be here. They'll celebrate getting free and all the things that freedom does. And I don't know, it's super holy, which is fun. It's fun that we do have an outlet for that in our church. There are people in our church that say, I'm going to invest my life into that and see that, even though it's on the campus or on the property over there of First Baptist Church, another church. But we're going, hey, we're in this big church, big C church thing together. Yeah. We're in it together, and they're doing great work. Let's help them. Let's support them. Let's do it together. So, caring for people might be God's greatest call. The most precious treasure is people. It's always going to be people. I want to read some verses, so we're going to read some Bible. Give us some Bible. Got Bible access right there. I'll give you a verse, and we'll read them together. There's going to be 10 or so here. So, who wants Galatians 6:1 and 2 first?
6:1.
Yeah, Galatians 6:1 and 2, and then Susie, do you want to take Hebrews 3:12 and 13? And I'll take the one after that, Corinthians 12. Corinthians 12. And once we all get them. Good? Galatians 6:1 and 2. Susie, you good with Hebrews 3:12 and 13? Okay. Galatians 6:1 and 2. Go ahead,
It says, brothers, if anyone is caught in any transgression, you who are spiritual should restore him in a spirit of gentleness. Keep watch on yourself, lest you be too tempted. Bear one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. So there's a few things in those passages there of bearing one another's burdens. We have a job, a biblical mandate to bear one another's burdens, right? That's what this caring piece is that I'm going to bear the burden of some other marriage or some other family or some other circumstance because I do have something to offer. I do have something to invest into somebody else, right? If somebody is, broken over here on someone, I get to restore them by the spirit of gentleness. I'm not just going to go bulldozing in here that there's an issue over here in their life that I recognize. No, I'm going to restore them in a spirit of gentleness. I'm actually going to come alongside them. I'm going to restore
with the purpose of not getting any credit. This isn't about me, and we'll talk about that as well as one of the ethical things. This is not about me getting credit because I did this great thing in this one marriage, this one situation. I don't want any of the credit. Jesus many times would say, hey, don't tell anybody, right? Like he did this some great thing. He's like, don't say a word, basically. He's like, hey, I don't need the credit for it. Like, you go and live, go and sin no more, go and do whatever. And so we do have a mandate to help and to carry burdens. We also have this idea that we're supposed to do it with a spirit of gentleness. And so people love gentle more than they like bulldozers, right? And so this can be challenging. Again, this is a certain personality of ministers are not gentle. It is, I got the truth and I'm going to tell you about it, right? Social media world right now is very, very, everyone's bold. Like, not everyone, but there is a boldness because you're behind a keyboard and you can just say what you want to say without any consequence on some levels, right? Like, or less consequence. If you're face to face, you feel different than when you just throw a grenade out there somewhere, right? And so our job is to be gentle and to restore gently, and then let's invest into the lives of other people. Let's bear their burden. So Hebrews 3:12 and 13.
Be careful then, dear brothers and sisters. Make sure that your own hearts are not evil and unbelieving, turning you away from the living God. You must warn each other every day while it is still today, so that none of you will be deceived by sin and hardened against God.
So another translation says, encourage one another instead of warning one another. But I do have blind spots and I do need warnings. I need people to see some of my shortcomings, all of my shortcomings I could use some help with. And how we do that, though, how you point out somebody else's weakness or somebody else's flaw or the one thing they forgot in that letter that your spouse wrote to you, right? Like, how you point that out is really more important than the one thing many times, right? We sometimes just come, again, blazing in, but let's encourage one another. Like, it's amazing. I've coached a lot. I've been coached a lot, like as an athlete, and there's good coaches. They can tell you the hardest thing, but they can do it gently. They can do it softly. They can encourage you. They can nudge you. It might be another way to say it. They can nudge you in the right direction. Like, we don't need, abrupt course corrections all the time. We don't need this. Now, there are times where we need this to get out of a ditch, and we got to do that gently and lovingly and caringly, but we don't need this when it was just that, right? Like, so balancing that tension of how we do these things, how we care, what we say, when we say it. The timing is so stinking important a lot of times. Like, the great leadership principles have a lot to do with when are you leading? Like, are you always on, or is there a time where you're going to deliver privately? Like, you can lead people privately so that publicly they're crushing it, right? Like, you don't have to lead everyone publicly just because they are out in the public, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with drawing away to the side and going, hey, let me tell you, can I share something with you? And encouraging them or warning them or nudging them in a direction. So 1 Corinthians 12:13.
Before you go there, though, I've been struggling with this myself because I've been a fixer and a control freak, and I've learned, and I am learning that I've gotten into that situation because I felt ill at ease in the situation, and that was the only way I could supposedly have control and be safe.
Yeah.
And so that's where I find myself now, and I think the Lord is actually putting me in a situation right now to teach me, and this class is probably going to be very timely, but I just found, that I got into a situation with a friend of mine that's really having some troubles, and trying to go in and help, but the situation is just so crazy.
Yeah.
And I go in there and it's like I'm having these flashbacks to my youth and everything. And so I go in and I'm over-controlling and I'm overreacting and I'm over-correcting her.
Yeah.
And I know, because I'm, being in the Word now in a way, it's like, I come out of there and it's like, I'm not helping her, but I know I'm being driven because I'm trying to save myself. So I'm actually backing away because I'm getting too drawn in, and I'm going into the well, into the storm with her, and I got to get back out and be a lighthouse.
So I was at a conference last week.
How do you get out of that?
Well, I'm gonna do my best to share with how you get out. I was at a conference last week. It's a pastor's conference. There's probably, I don't know, this room probably seats 1,200 people, these are all pastors and their wives, or church leaders and their wives, or ministry leaders and their wives, couples, so maybe 600 couples, let's call it. It was full, the room's full. And John Maxwell, who's like an incredible leadership guy, has written, I don't know how many books. I would guess that, let's call it 60 books or some leadership books, like a ton of leadership books. He's an older guy, so he's kind of like a spiritual grandfather, like he can basically say what he wants to say and nobody's going to complain. Literally, he said that. He's like, I can say whatever I want to say and no one's going to really tell me not to, like kind of one of those, like I can just be as rough as I want to be, And he was suggesting that during this last 18 months, as leaders, he says, I've done a lot of leadership stuff. I've watched a lot of leaders. And he says, one of the most grievous things for me as a leader of leaders in this last 18 months is to see leaders not standing up and lead. That he said, he paused and he looked out and he said, y'all are better than this. You're better than this. You need to get up and lead. Some of y'all just been tossed to and fro, just side to side, just yanked all over the place by all the cultural things, and we're supposed to be leading the culture. If you're a leader, you're a pastor, you have influence, lead somebody somewhere, take somebody somewhere, right? And the principle of that is to go, don't get sucked into everybody else's mess. You come in to lead them out of a mess, right? You can come in, you can hang with them, hear their story, understand their process. But like in this marriage crisis situation, just because wife and husband don't get along and they're not kind to each other, I don't get sucked into being unkind to my wife when I go home now, right? Because you get frustrated, or the wear and tear, call it the grit, call it the grind of ministry or whatever. You're ministering all the time and you're depleted. I go home depleted and I'm short with my kids or I'm short with my wife. That is not healthy. That is not good, right? Like that we have to be careful of going, I'm going to lead here and not be sucked into this, right? And so like you're saying, man, I kind of get in the pit. You get stuck in the pit. How do I get out? Well, you're going to lead your way out. Like the same way you got sucked in, you have to recognize I'm getting sucked in and go, I'm going to lead my way out of this thing, right? Any one of us could get sucked into all sorts of cultural things. We can just say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing, not lead, just get whatever. But once you're there, what do? You just got to lead your way out of that. You might have to cut some ties. You might have to cut some things off that have been sucking you back, so easily entangling us. There's things of this world that easily entangle us, and just lead your way out of that. And I was challenged. I was like, personally, I don't feel like I've been sucked around by cultural things. Like I'm not the guy who's like going, man, the election, or man, the vaccine, or man, the mask. And I'm probably the guy who's going, is it done yet? Like, and I'm like kind of annoyed by like that. If anything gets to me, it's the stuff that it's not done yet. That's the annoying part for me, more than what the latest trends are, this or that. I see it. I probably am disconnected from most of that because I'm not social media junkie everywhere, all over the things, and I'm not watching the news, and I'm not, there's a lot that I've insulated myself with, but and only by the grace of God, I have a little bit more of a personality that's kind of a little bit like this and not this. But it hurts to watch people do this when they should be leading in a direction, And a lot of churches and a lot of ministries have just got sucked into this roller coaster ride, and we don't have to. We have the Spirit of God that will lead us, and we got to lean on that to lead us so that we can lead others. So anyway, we should take a break for a couple of minutes here, and then we'll come back. How about that?